I am sorry for what I have done, but she deserved it." Those were the remorseless words of a man who had just taken the life of his own wife, a woman he'd been with for 14 years, the mother of his children. The words of a man who had brutally ended a promising future before it could fully unfold. On Monday, September 27th, at Manchester Crown Court, Aubrey Poole Paddy, a 46-year-old South African, was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his estranged wife, Tamara Paddy. It wasn't a sentence that could be argued. Aubrey had pleaded guilty, and his remorseless words and meticulously planned attack was all the proof the court needed. It all started in the early hours of July 7th, 2021, at precisely 3:30 a.m. Tamara was inside her apartment in Lakeside Stalybridge, completely unaware that someone else was already there, hiding, waiting for the perfect moment to end her life. A warm welcome to True Crime Family Stories. We're excited to have you join us as we delve into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the most shocking true crime stories from around the world. To stay up to date on our latest episodes, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We'd also love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, as we might just be covering a crime from your city or neighborhood next. Your support means a lot to us, and we appreciate your feedback in helping us create more content that resonates with our audience. Tamara Paddy was born and raised in Butterworth, Eastern Cape, South Africa, where she spent her earliest childhood. Later, she moved to Kailua, Cape Town, eager to leave her hometown behind and create a new future for herself. She had always longed for something more, for a life where she could achieve something great. And so, in 2004, she left South Africa and moved to Manchester, United Kingdom, determined to chase her dreams. Tamara recorded remarkable success, despite being in a strange land, in a new country. The South African woman strived for excellence, pushing herself to greater heights. After many years of dedication and hard work, she earned a degree in law, a proof of her determination and eagerness to win. But even with a law degree, she didn't stop there. It became clear that Tamara wanted to serve humanity itself, not just build a future for herself, but also uplift others. This ambition led her to establish her own business. She became a businesswoman and successful entrepreneur after founding Greenleaf Health and Social Care Limited, a company that provided health care and catered to the needs of adults. Tamara built a successful empire from the ground up, going from a stranger in a new country to a respected entrepreneur and advocate for social care. She had everything many envied. Yet no one could have guessed the struggles she faced, the darkness that was right behind her success. Because the very person who should have been her protector, the very man who had sworn to love her before men and the divine, was the one who would take her life. His name was Aubrey Poole Paddy. Born in June 1975 in Pretoria, South Africa, he wasn't just an ordinary man. He had served in the South African Navy, where he was well-trained, well-respected, and known for his strong leadership. Tamara and Aubrey met in Cape Town and decided that they completed each other and tied the knot before eventually moving to the UK, where they built their lives together. They bought a home. They started a family. They had two lovely children whom they planned to raise to become just as dedicated and as strong as they had been. To the outside world, they represented what many would call a power couple. While others struggled with separation and divorce, Tamara and Aubrey had been together for 14 years. Their friends admired them, viewing their relationship as something strong and unbreakable. Tamara was known for her kind and gentle nature. She was a strong-willed and dedicated woman who knew what she wanted and always strived to be better. Aubrey was just as ambitious. Many described him as charming, a man who could walk into a room and instantly win everyone over with his sweet words and amazing personality. Tamara's friends believed she was lucky to have a husband who adored her, protected her, and loved her deeply. But beneath that charm and simple nature, Aubrey was a possessive man. From the very beginning, he wanted Tamara all to himself. And as the years went by, that love turned into jealousy and ownership. And that twisted belief of ownership would soon turn into something deadly. During their 14 years of marriage, Tamara and Aubrey built an enviable life together. They ran businesses, entered into several partnerships, and had two beautiful daughters, Tia and Mia. But what is success if you aren't even trusted by your own husband? This was the painful reality Tamara Patti lived with for years. The more successful she became, the more insecure Aubrey grew. He constantly checked her phone, emails, and voicemails. Whenever she went out, he called her repeatedly, demanding to know where she was. He insisted on video calls, making her prove she was at the location she claimed to be. What started as possessiveness slowly became oppression, and Tamara was exhausted. At first, she may have waved it off, laughed over it, believing her husband was simply being protective. But as the years went by, Tamara saw the evil that was fast approaching. After 14 years, she decided she needed to take back her own life. She was an independent woman, a mother, a successful business owner. She refused to be treated like she was incapable of making her own choices. And so she made a decision that was meant to free her, to give her a life of her own. But that decision would ultimately cost her life. In February 2021, Tamara celebrated her birthday. 43 years of success, trials, tribulations, joy, and determination. But it wasn't just another year of life. It was also the month she finally separated from Aubrey Patti. After more than a decade, she decided she no longer wanted to be with him. She was ready to move on. Little did she know he would never allow that to happen. When Tamara separated from Aubrey, it felt like everything was okay. Nothing had gone wrong. Two adults had decided to go their separate ways in the most cordial way. Tamara moved into her own home in Greater Manchester and began her life anew. She chose the path of civility. She knew her children needed their father, and although she was more than capable of taking care of Tia and Mia alone, she did not want to cut ties with Aubrey completely. They had built a beautiful family together, and their daughters constantly asked about him. Beyond being husband and wife, they were also business partners, and Tamara knew she had to keep things professional in order to keep their businesses running smoothly. But one thing was for certain. She thought she had moved on. She thought she was free. She thought she had finally reclaimed her life from a partner who could never trust her. She wanted space, and she believed that distancing herself from him would give her the peace she desperately needed. But Aubrey didn't think the same way. Number for Aubrey Patti, she had just disrespected and disobeyed him, and he was not willing to let her go. He was not willing to let go of their past. He was simply waiting for the perfect time to take his revenge. If only Tamara knew how close death was to her door, perhaps she would have called for help. If only she knew the monster beneath the exterior of the perfect man she married, then maybe she would have contacted the authorities. But Aubrey didn't look like the sort of man to resort to violence. He was civil, he was calm, and he was charming. Until July 6, 2021, the mask finally came off, revealing one of the most chilling murder that Stalybridge, Greater Manchester, has ever witnessed. On Tuesday, July 6th, Tamara had an encounter with her estranged husband after being separated for months. She was not one to engage in arguments, but this time she was firm. She was not going to let Aubrey manipulate her into returning. Aubrey begged her to reconsider. He wanted her back. He wanted his wife. But no matter how much he pleaded, Tamara refused to budge. She was done living a life where she constantly walked on eggshells. She was done being distrusted. She wanted time alone. However, she was willing to offer him friendship for the sake of their daughters. She was willing to remain professional to keep their businesses afloat. But Aubrey did not want friendship. He wanted to own her. Tamara realized this a little too late when he demanded her phone, and when she refused, he punched her, right inside her own car. It had started as a seemingly normal conversation, something two adults could discuss rationally. But the moment Tamara refused to hand over her phone for him to go through, as she had done so many times before, Aubrey snapped. He punched her across the face. It was not an accident. It was not a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate act of violence. Tamara had already decided she was done with the marriage. She was no longer going to be his puppet, and she was no longer going to tolerate his controlling behavior. But Aubrey was not done, and he made that very clear when he hit her. He did not care if anyone saw. He did not care about the consequences. He did not care whether she reported him to the authorities. Tamara was his, and in his mind that meant she had no right to privacy, no right to independence, no right to say no. This raises a painful question. Where should we draw the line? At what point do we tell ourselves that love is no longer enough to justify staying? Many believe Tamara should have gone to the authorities immediately after Aubrey hit her. Some say she should have filed a restraining order. Others argue that she was simply trying to be mature, trying to resolve things peacefully for the sake of her daughters. Perhaps she wanted to shield them from the truth. Perhaps she wanted to avoid making the divorce even messier. Perhaps she thought she could still fix things. But one thing was certain. After that day, Tamara knew her husband was dangerous, and separation alone was not enough to protect her. With whatever strength she had left, she ordered Aubrey to leave her car. When he refused, she pushed him out. Then she drove away. She thought she had escaped. She had no idea that was not the last time she would see him. And the next time he returned, it would be more than just a punch to the face. In this tragic story of love, breaking of boundaries, mistrust, and the darkness of jealousy, one thing remains clear. Tamara loved her daughters. She wanted to protect them. She wanted to keep them safe from the drama and violence between her and Aubrey. Perhaps that was why she kept silent. Perhaps that was why she told no one. Very few people knew of Aubrey's obsession. Very few people knew that even after their separation, even months later, he was still going through her voicemails. He was still monitoring her life. He was still watching her. Aubrey did not believe in boundaries. He did not understand the meaning of no. He had already decided that Tamara belonged to him, and he was determined to own her in every way possible. He did not want her to move on. That night, after punching Tamara in the face, Aubrey sent several text messages to her phone, apologizing for what he had done. He begged her to forgive him, filling his messages with sweet nothings, hoping to manipulate her emotions. He said every word that might have sounded like an apology to a 5-year-old child, but Tamara saw through it. She knew these were the words of a man trying to get into her head, trying to make her forget just how abusive, controlling, and violent he had been. Tamara has had enough. She would not be with a man who went through her voicemails behind her back. She could not tolerate a man who always demanded access to her life, even when she had clearly told him she was uncomfortable with it. She refused to be manipulated any longer. But among all the texts Aubrey sent that night, one stood out, one that made Tamara realize just how dangerous he truly was. "This will be the last time you ever disrespect me." Was that a threat? Should Tamara have alerted the authorities immediately? No one will ever know what was going through her mind at that moment. But one thing was certain. Less than 24 hours later, she would not live to fully understand what that message truly meant. Perhaps Tamara had planned to tell her family about what had happened. Maybe that punch had finally pushed her to confide in her friends. But she never got the chance to do any of that. Because the next day, while she was at work, someone broke into her apartment. and it was no one other than her own husband, Aubrey Paddy. Months of separation had failed to send the message that she was done with him. Instead of letting go, Aubrey had become even more obsessed. But this time, he didn't just want her back, he wanted her gone. Permanently. If she refused to belong to him, then she wouldn't belong to anyone at all. Does love justify possession? At what point does an unhealthy attachment become a deadly obsession? Aubrey had already made his choice. He didn't come to her apartment to talk. He didn't come to convince her to come back to him. He came prepared to kill. An innocent man might have sent an angry text. An innocent man might have even confronted Tamara one last time in a desperate attempt to win her back. But no innocent man would break into her apartment, hide in a guest room, and wait in the darkness for hours, quietly waiting for the perfect moment to murder. No innocent man would come armed with a hammer, a metal bar, a knife, a cord, and a pair of gloves. Aubrey had every intention of making sure Tamara didn't live to see another day. Have you ever come home late at night, exhausted, and only turned on the lights in your bedroom? Most people don't bother checking every corner of their home before collapsing into bed. Tamara was no different. That night, on July 7th, 2021, at 1:30 a.m., she arrived home at her Stalybridge apartment with a co-worker. Her daughters, Mia and Tia, were already asleep in their room. Too tired to think about anything other than getting some rest, Tamara and her co-worker went straight to their separate bedrooms for the night. Neither of them knew that there was already someone else inside the house. Aubrey had been hiding in one of the guest rooms for hours, waiting. He had set an alarm to wake himself up at exactly 3:30 a.m. We can't help but wonder, did he hesitate? Did he think, even for a second, about what his children would go through if their mother died? Did he think of the law and the inevitable consequences of his actions, or did he truly believe he would get away with everything he was about to do? At 3:30 a.m., Aubrey entered Tamara's bedroom. Without a word, without a warning, he slammed the metal bar down on her chest, trying to kill her on the spot. Tamara jolted awake, gasping in pain, struggling to fight him off. But Aubrey was stronger. She kicked, she screamed, she fought with everything she had. Tamara was not a weak woman. She didn't go down easily. But Aubrey was stronger and more alert than the sleepy woman. The more she screamed, the more viciously he attacked her, beating her with the metal bar, trying to strangle her with a cord, doing everything in his power to make sure she didn't survive. And then he realized something. There was someone else in the next room. But this did not make him stop or run away. Number Aubrey did not run. Instead, he locked the front door from the inside, making sure no one could escape. Then he returned to finish what he had started. Tamara was weak now, her body broken, barely breathing. And that's when Aubrey left, satisfied that she'd finally died. But Tamara was a survivor, and even after the attack with the metal bars, she was alive, barely breathing, and with what strength she had, she screamed for help. And that was her final mistake. As soon as Aubrey heard her voice, as soon as he realized she was still alive, he rushed back into the room. This time, he didn't use the metal bar. This time, he grabbed the knife. 7 times he stabbed her. 7 times the blade pierced her flesh, tore into her organs, and she bled out on the floor. And then, finally, there was silence. Just across the room, her daughters lay sleeping, completely unaware that their mother had just been murdered. Tamara would never wake up with them the next morning. She would never make them breakfast again. She would never take them to school. And the man responsible for their loss, their own father, had destroyed their lives in the most ruthless, painful, and brutal way imaginable. By the time Tamara's co-worker managed to call 999, it was already too late. She was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. The knife had pierced vital organs, and she had lost too much blood. Tamara was pronounced dead, Aubrey had fled the scene. He was nowhere to be found. But that didn't last for long because just a few days later, the great Manchester police were able to track him down when he picked up the phone himself and called the police. Then he said the words that proved to the world what a monster Tamara had married. "I'm sorry for what I did, but she deserved it." She deserved it. This wasn't just an apology. Aubrey didn't just take Tamara's life, he erased her existence with no remorse. He showed the world that in his mind she was nothing more than an object, something he could possess, control, and ultimately destroy when she no longer served his purpose. Tamara was only 43 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had fought so hard to build something for herself, to give her daughters a life they could be proud of. She had worked multiple jobs, pushed herself through school, and endured years of struggle to create the stability she never had growing up. And in the end, all of that was taken from her in a single night by the man who once vowed to love and protect her. Why did Aubrey Paddy make that call? Was it guilt, or did some tiny, buried part of his conscience whisper that what he had done was monstrous? Or did he simply realize that there was nowhere to run and the law would find him? Whatever his reasoning, Aubrey Paddy was cruel, and when his trial began, the truth became even more cruel. This wasn't a moment of lost temper. This wasn't self-defense, and it wasn't a crime committed in the heat of the moment. It was a premeditated execution. He had left his home that night with a plan. He had packed the tools he would need to subdue her. He had crept into her apartment, hidden in the shadows, and waited for the perfect moment. He did this, knowing his own children were asleep in the next room. He did this, knowing there was another person in the house. And still, he didn't stop. He didn't stop when she begged. He didn't stop when she screamed. He didn't stop even after she fell to the floor, bleeding out, because the moment he heard her voice, still alive, still calling for help, he went back to finish the job. On Monday, September 27th, 2021, at Manchester Crown Court, Aubrey Poulet Paddy was sentenced to life with a minimum of 23 years before being considered for parole. But does locking him away in a cell ever compensate for the pain, the terror, the betrayal this innocent woman must have felt in those final moments? Can it undo the nightmares that her daughters will carry for the rest of their lives? Because while Aubrey sits behind bars, breathing, Tamara is gone. Her dreams, her ambitions, her love for her children, all erased in a single act of cruelty. The horrifying truth is, there are countless men like Aubrey Paddy walking among us. Men who believe that love means ownership. Men who think that if they can't have a woman, then no one can. Men who refuse to accept rejection, who feel entitled to someone else's life. We need to recognize the signs because Tamara's story should have ended differently. She should have been alive today, watching her daughters grow, achieving her dreams, living the life she worked so hard for. Instead, she became another tragic statistic of women killed for love. Another woman killed because she dared to walk away. Let Tamara Paddy's name be remembered, and let her story serve as a warning that love should never cost you your life. If you haven't already, like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear Tamara's story. Subscribe for more true crime stories that uncover the truth and seek justice. Thanks for watching till the end, and we'll see you in our next true crime story. If this chilling story sent shivers down your spine, make sure to share the video, subscribe to the channel for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss a new video.